Hey ladies, so today I have something special for you. We're changing it up. I have been going back, well not me, my amazing team has been going back and asking some of the other podcasts that I've actually been on if we could utilize that interview on Mom is in Control. So throughout the weeks to come, you may hear some interviews that I've done in the past with other people. So let's dive into today's episode. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think.
I'm Cherylanne Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 143 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. And today I am speaking with parenting expert Heather Shovine. And I want to take a minute to tell you a little bit about Heather, about this episode, and how we decided to do this topic. So you might imagine that as someone who works with professional women full-time, like I do, that I end up working with a lot of working mothers. And you would be 100% right about that assumption. So many of the women who end up in a coaching relationship with me and with Brilliant Balance are parenting and working at the same time. And when I talk with women about their parenting challenges, one of the things that comes up over and over again is, I can't stand how it feels when I yell at my kids. There's this sense of guilt, this sense of shame, this sense of, I'm just not doing it right. This isn't how I want it to feel. And yet, as time-starved, very ambitious, women who are running busy households, there's always kind of this hurry-up offense going on, right? We got to get all this stuff done. We got to get everybody where they need to be. And in order to get children to listen, it's kind of the oldest trick in the book, to raise your voice, and the louder you get, it seems the better they listen. So there's this conflicting relationship between, gosh, it sometimes seems like it's effective, but I really don't like how it feels. There's got to be a better way. Well, enter Heather Shovine, because when I crossed paths with her work via the Mom is in Control podcast, which she hosts, I knew this was the person who could come and talk with our audience about how to stop yelling, and instead how to speak to your child so they really listen. Heather is a coach. She's a leadership coach. She's a strategic parenting expert, and she works primarily with women as well. So she has professional experience as a social worker, and she is a mom of 3 boys. And she created this signature approach to really help her clients look at how to find success in their business, primarily as entrepreneurs, and also how to find success in their lives. So her podcast is where she talks about all the topics. She talks about womanhood, marriage, parenting, and her experience living through a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, all while running a successful business without burning out. And her work has been featured broadly. She's a TEDx speaker. She was on the OWN network. She was on the Jenny McCarthy show. She's been in Entrepreneur magazine, Real Simple magazine. She's just truly a bright light in this space, and someone who I think you are really going to enjoy this conversation with. So our conversation focuses primarily on this aspect of parenting, on yelling as a strategy, why it doesn't work, what's more effective, and what you can do if it's a place where you really want to make a shift. But we get into some other really interesting territory as well, including what she's working on now and how she runs her own life as a busy working mom. So if you're new to the show, welcome. If you are familiar with the show, without further ado, let me introduce you to Heather Shovine. So Heather, thank you so much for being with us today. I am super excited to have you.
I'm so excited for this conversation. Thank you.
You are like a perfect fit for our audience. And I was sharing with them in one of my tea time episodes that you were coming, and sourced a couple of questions for today from people who were on that broadcast and asked questions. So parenting is definitely a hot topic for us, and it is fantastic to have an expert in the midst. So what you and I had talked a little bit about is we're going to hone this episode in on yelling, because it's such a hot button for the women who I've coached, and I know for the women in our audience. So let's just start with like, what makes us yell?
Yes. So this is an interesting conversation because so my background is in social work, and I came into my work with like parenting. I would say, well, first of all, I say parenting is personal growth on steroids. And that was my into this, I would say, personal development. Like parenting was the thing for me. So a lot of times when women are coming to me, that's the pain point of what is showing up, but that's not the problem. So there's a saying, give them what they want, but teach them what they need. And it's the same when you think about going to the doctor, right? A symptom, oh, I'm itchy. Okay, here's a cream for the itch. But really there's something deeper. It's like, why was the itch there? Yes. So for me, yelling is the symptom. And when you think about it, why are we yelling? I'm raising my voice and yelling because I want to be heard. I want to control something. I want to get somebody's attention. I want their behavior to change. So what I've discovered about myself and the people that I'm working with, I have 3 boys. They're 15, 10, and 7. And I actually don't yell anymore. And I could say that with confidence. And I'm like, have I yelled in a while?
You're testing yourself.
Yeah,
right?
But yelling used to be my parenting strategy. Like that was what I learned and discovered. And I didn't make a conscious decision to stop. I wasn't like, okay, I'm never going to do it again. But as I changed, my need to stop yelling shifted. I think during COVID, like during quarantine, I probably raised my voice a few times, but I could identify what I call, there's these red, green, and yellow zones. So when you're in your red zone, you're yelling, right? But there's something that's happening before that situation that we can feel it rising. We can feel the bubble coming, and we're not paying attention typically because we're so busy, right? We're go, do. And we're so disconnected from ourselves. We're disconnected from our children. And so I can observe now the yellow zone of what's happening in myself. Example, if I don't have a really solid morning routine and I am off my game, I'm already living in my yellow zone that day. If I'm not eating, I'm already living in my yellow zone. If I'm drinking too much coffee, like all of these things that I've been aware of how my mood shifts with my habits. And then also observing my children's behavior. So of course, many different developmental levels, ages, things like that. But if my boys, it's lunchtime and I'm trying to push that, no, we're now headed into the red zone. Like it's like you're learning, you're becoming more intuitive. And the green zone is you're practicing your habits. You feel really, really good and things are going great. But the surprising thing is people don't like to live in their green zone because we're taught and conditioned that feeling good is this bad thing. Like you should be ashamed for feeling good.
Not sustainable, right?
Not sustainable, which is interesting because that's what I'm trying to teach women is the better we feel, the bigger impact we can make. This is going to affect your business, your parenting, all areas of your life, which is that quote unquote balance that everyone is going after. But that's like a mainstream pandemic in itself.
Yes. So that's interesting. The green, yellow, and red zones. I find that very relatable. I can sort of map those in my own mind. One of the things I've wondered about is why is yelling such a problem? Like what effect does our yelling have on our children or does it, right? What gives us the sort of the impetus or the desire to stop?
Okay. So there's so many different directions that I could go in here, and every person that you talk to is going to give you a different angle. They're going to give you a different perspective. And I think it's really, really important. The place that I come from is trusting your inner knowing. Like, we can always look at someone else and go, oh, they said it's because my parents used to yell, or they said it's because the brain, blah, 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 which is all true. But I want you to ask yourself, why am I yelling? Because the more we can look within ourselves and get those answers, we then can feel in control, right? We can feel in control. We're like, oh, well, if I just change this up. So when I started my journey, a lot of times parents were looking for like that perfect strategy. Like, tell me what to do when my child won't listen to me. So I'm going to back it up a little bit. I'm going to tell you my own personal journey of like how I actually physically stopped yelling. So 15 years ago, I became a mother, looked at my son. I was a young mom. I was 18. I already felt like I was failing in motherhood even before I became a mother. And I just remember looking at him thinking, I need to become the best version of myself for you. Like, I need to embody and become the person that I want to be, like to be that role model. And so that's when I went on this journey and I started figuring out who I was. So as I'm at work during the day in social work, went to school in social work, working with families, teaching them how to keep their stuff together, I would come home and then yell at my son. I would yell at my son because his behavior was out of control. There was anger, there was anxiety, and I didn't know how to support that. So what I did was yell because that was the only thing I knew how to get in control. But in that moment, what I realized was I didn't feel in control of my own anger and my own anxiety. I had no tools or strategies or awareness around it. So how could I then empathize and have compassion for what was going on in his little body?
Right.
So the first product I ever developed was called Teach Your Kid to Meditate. And I laugh now, and people will email me after and be like, where's that product? It's no longer for sale because yes, I could still sell it. But here's the thing. I wanted him to meditate because it was his problem. It wasn't my problem. Like, and I say that I'm laughing.
Right.
Because,
wink, wink.
Yeah. Because my anger and anxiety, he was just mirroring it. He was like, anytime you're triggered by somebody and yelling is part of that, or you're like, oh, they make me angry or they make me frustrated, they're igniting a spark inside of you that's alive. It's like you can all be in a room, you're on a panel, someone says one thing, one person's triggered and nobody else is triggered. It's because that person is igniting something inside of you. So I was triggered and I would yell because I was scared. I was afraid of his anger and anxiety because I knew it was inside of me too, and I had no idea how to manage it. So that's when I started meditation and mindfulness. And as I was teaching him these skills, I was learning the same thing. And then now when my kids, like, yes, their behavior has changed. Yes, we've developed, communication and dialogue with this. But the number one thing that has changed is when I'm angry and I want to yell, one, I typically know why. I know there was some form of myself that I neglected, like way in advance. But two, I look at my kids and I think, this is not your responsibility to manage my anger. This is my responsibility. And there's no reason why I need to project this onto you right now. So 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer. I was hustling in my business. I was doing everything the world teaches us to do. And I was sick. I neglected myself so bad. And it was at this point where I could not physically yell. I could not yell. I had no more energy to yell. And my boys were still boys. And I would say things like, can you pick that up, please? And we're normally be like, can you pick that up, please? Let's
right.
go. Can you pick it up now? And I'm raising my voice because I need it done now. And I had no energy. So I'd say, can you pick that up, please?
And they would still do it.
And they would do it. Or I would say it 3 times can you pick that up? Hey, I'm going to get on your level. I'm going to look at you. I'm softer. Look, I'm going to put your hand on this thing. Can you physically pick this up, please? Okay, let's put our shoes on. Instead of let's go, we got to go, let's put your shoes on. It was, hey, let's put your shoes on. I'm physically down on the floor with you, putting your shoes on. But I had to do all the inner work
Yes.
So yelling is a symptom. It is not a parenting strategy.
It's so fascinating. And when you lowered your voice intentionally to make the point, it made me think about two of my children had the same kindergarten teacher, and her and my other daughter had a different kindergarten teacher. And the two had the same one. Her teaching style is very akin to what you were just modeling, right? When she wanted to call the children over, she had this little chime. And she would lower her voice and say, we're all going to gather in the circle now. And they would tiptoe over like these little perfect model, that woman just does not raise her voice. It's not necessary. She creates this very calming, inviting environment where they have to get quiet to hear her. Right? They're not going to yell back. It doesn't make any sense. So I was thinking about that when you were speaking. And I was also thinking about, I wonder how often our yelling is we didn't ever have their attention in the first place. Like you mentioned, you had to maybe go over 3 times and put their hand on the item. Sometimes I think we say, hey, bring your stuff down, we're leaving. And they really don't hear us, or they're like not paying attention. They're not ready for that directive. And then we just get louder and louder instead of going up to them, physically meeting them where they are and saying, hey, it's getting to be time to leave. Can you bring your stuff down? Like we're lazy about it, right? So we're yelling as a shortcut to actually engaging.
And then you're projecting all of this
hurry,
frustration and busyness onto the child. And then when you go out there in the world and post it on Instagram or look on Facebook, you're getting confirmation that you're doing it the right way. Mm-hmm. Is anyone else exhausted and overwhelmed? Oh, are your children not listening too? Yes, me too, me too, me too. And when you buy into that, like cultural energy, kind of like, the energy of the classroom where she's calm and she's created this peaceful environment. But then when you're buying into this bigger culture of like playing the victim and like there is no other way, we just all need to scream and yell, you're creating this very toxic relationship. And I don't know about you, but I always use the example for people. I'm like, energy is everything. You walk into a room, the asshole in the room, like you can feel the energy radiating off of people. If somebody's warm and inviting and you're awkward and you don't know anyone else in that room, you're going to gravitate towards the person that feels open and inviting. Sure. But the person that's like very standoffish and rigid, you're going to be repelled to go near them. And believe it or not, like this is a hard pill to swallow, but that's how your children feel towards you. Like just think any teacher or caregiver that you had, if they were warm and open, you felt like you wanted to cuddle with them. You wanted to get closer. But if they were rigid and angry and passive aggressive, you didn't want to get close to them. And that's what our children are experiencing with us. And believe it or not, if you're using yelling all the time as your way to get their attention, they are tuning you out as a coping strategy because they're like, oh, and actually they know she needs to yell 5 times in order for me to pay attention. So, she only did it twice. I still got 2 more times or 3 more times.
Before she loses it.
Yes.
Yeah. I think you're so right. Yeah. I mean, as I've talked to women about this and then my own experience with my 3 children, I think it's so right. We're training them involuntarily to wait until we yell. And then we say, well, why did I have to yell? Because we've trained them that's how we finally end the request. I think this alternative strategy of saying, how do you drop in?
Yeah.
Drop into the moment, drop your voice, drop your defenses, get their attention in a way that's a lot more magnetic, and then pull them into the thing you're asking them to do. Mm-hmm. It seems a lot more effective.
Well, and it's not a one and done. No. And I know we're in an instant gratification culture, and that's the hard thing. People think, I'm going to go on a 3-day juice cleanse and lose all of this weight. I'm going to work out for a week and then go on vacation. And like, it's just ridiculous, the things that we think. And you have to stop and start thinking for yourself and say, my lifestyle is not sustainable, or it's not in alignment with how I want to feel. And so first you have to get clear, what is the relationship that you want with your children? Like simply take out a pen and a paper and ask yourself, how do I want to feel in this relationship? And then every action that you're taking, every time you open your mouth with them, is this in alignment? If your core desire is to feel connected to your child and you're screaming and yelling at them, is that energy in alignment? If the answer is no, simply just ask yourself, how can I redirect this conversation to be more connected? But you also have to remember that you have to repair the trust and the respect first in that relationship. So even if it's a toddler and all of a sudden, and I've had this from clients, you stop yelling and you're lowering your voice and you're changing things up, your children, their behavior might actually get a little bit louder before it gets quieter because they're like, what's wrong? Are you okay?
Yeah, they're so confused.
Yeah,
right?
You're not yelling anymore. Are you okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can imagine that. I talk a lot about like just sharing with them what you're trying to do. Like, hey, I am aware that I've been yelling more than I want to and more than I think you want to. How does it make you feel when I yell? Right? When do you think I yell? So this conversation with them before you start changing your behavior so they don't wonder, what alien abducted mom, I think is a helpful precursor maybe to making the changes so they know they can hold you accountable to the changes. Hey friend, ever wondered why you're so tired all the time? Why you need that afternoon caffeine hit every day just to stay in the game? Hint, you probably need more sleep. So I created something just for you. It's a special guide to help you stop feeling so tired all the time. I'll teach you my best ideas to move from exhausted to energized so you can live out your brilliant dreams. Head to brilliantbalance.net/sleep and get your guide today. You're going to love this. I think we have to talk about time, Heather, because it feels like some of this alternate strategy, or maybe say it this way, the reason we yell may be a perceived lack of time, right? It seems like a shortcut. I'm going to get this result faster if I just yell up the stairs or I yell, to get what I need. How do we dance with that feeling of not having enough time to take the gentler approach?
This is such an interesting conversation, which is why I love talking about mindset and really doing the work to understand that your thoughts are not facts. Like, I don't have enough time is a thought. It is not a fact, right? We all have 24 hours in a day. You hear all those cliche things, but it's the feeling when you don't feel like your thought, I don't have enough time. And then the feeling is restriction. Challenge it. Be curious. So if you're catching yourself, I don't have enough time. I want to yell right now. I want to yell up the stairs because we have to go. We're going to be late somewhere. Awesome. Just challenge it. Well, what would I normally do? Well, I'm going to scream upstairs. They're going to come down. Like, you can play it out. You know how it's going to happen. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. So you look up the stairs and you're like, you know what? This time I'm just going to walk up and go into their room and say, we have to go. And you're going to stand there until they leave the room. Change things up, be curious. But what you're doing is you're challenging that story that you have. Maybe it takes you an extra 30 seconds the first time, right? But you're saving that 30 seconds on day 2, or you're saving so much more time. It's like, you got to put in the work at the beginning to save that time in the long run. It's the same story we tell ourselves with, I'll just do it myself. Nobody else can do it better than me. I see that with women all the time in their businesses, and myself included. And I have to look at that story and go, Heather, if you're doing this right now, okay, you can do this one time, but the next time, like, how many times do you have to learn this lesson before you realize this is something you can outsource? That is why you have a team, or that is why, like, my children are 15, 10, and 7. Do I need to really do every load of laundry, every cup, no, they can pick things up too. It's like, it doesn't always have to be you, but if you're chronically telling yourself, oh, look at me, I always have to do everything. Yeah. And you're the one doing everything. Why are they motivated to try?
Well, and that's the vicious cycle. That's what I love about that conversation you just led is the belief that I have to do everything, if you hold that belief, that would augment this feeling of I don't have enough time. So now you're feeling, pressured and resentment that you're doing everything and you don't have enough time. And now it's their fault that you don't have enough time. So here's even more reason to yell, right? Like, so breaking that cycle all the way back at its inception of the way we all get more time is I don't try to do everything by myself. Therefore, I can be calmer in our interactions. Like it's this reversal of that whole cycle, but you have to pause to unwind it, right? Like you can't just roll through it. So conversations like this one, I hope are helping people pause and unwind. What is the pattern I'm stuck in? And how could I rewrite this pattern to get a different outcome?
And as you're changing that pattern, this is where I think a lot of people don't talk about is resistance, because resistance to me is extremely manipulative. And I've noticed this in my own life, like so manipulative. It's those resistant thoughts of, I'll say to myself, oh, you deserve a break. Like you've been working out every day. Like you're good. You deserve a break. And then I'm like, but it's that moment where if I would have just said yes to that opportunity, I was breaking that cycle, like truly breaking that neural pathway in your brain. It's so manipulative. One thing, how resistance shows up for me is sleep. I get really, really tired. I'm like, oh, I need a nap. I don't need a nap. I do the task that I'm resisting. My energy comes right back.
Goes up. Mm-hmm.
It blows my mind how we need to be aware of this and watch how our bodies and our minds really do try to keep us in this fight or flight all the time, like the survival mode. And it's always trying to keep us safe, but it doesn't know that what we are about to do is life changing and life enhancing for us. And when you're in this pattern of wanting to yell and you're like, oh my God, I just want to yell so bad. I used to tell people like, put duct tape over your mouth. Like, I'm not kidding. Put duct tape over your mouth and be like, kids, mom is not yelling today. If I yell, here's the pen.
Bring the duct tape.
Here's the pen. We're going to have a tally. How many times I yelled today? Or don't use the duct tape, but like make it a game.
Yeah.
And watch yourself and go, oh my gosh, my kids called me out 10 times today where I was going to yell. Like that's ridiculous.
Well, and just I think them seeing that you want to grow and evolve and that you don't think you're perfect and that just because they're watching you yell doesn't mean you think that's the way to parent, that you are aware that you're on a journey as well. I think our generation is, I think, really starting to get good at that, at not everyone, but at unpacking, like, I don't have this all figured out. So I'm trying to get better at this. There was no manual. We are on a journey here. And the way I am doing it is not necessarily what I would want you to model in all aspects. Yeah. Right.
And I think that shows that you're human. And I think it gives your children permission too. Like when your children get older and they start going, I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. Like all the questions, all the conversations I'm having with my teenager now, like, listen, I don't have it figured out either. And when we have those human conversations, they're like, oh, okay. Like this is part of the human experience.
Yes. Yes. It makes me think about our spouses or partners and how do we engage with them? This was a question that came up from a listener is when they have a different parenting style and we may be on this journey, they may not be on it or want to be on it or want to change. How would you suggest we navigate that discussion?
This is the number one question I get too. They're like, okay, I need my partner on board. And I'm like, listen, there's a magicalness that happens when you change, they change. And it takes time, it takes dedication. But I've also known the more I try to control my husband, when I'm reflecting that back on myself, the more I realize it's something I'm not doing within myself. Like it's some type of work I'm not doing. So an example of this is, I don't know, I think this morning I was angry at him in my head and I was trying to, I did my morning routine. I had a really good morning routine this morning. And I come down and he gets out of bed and then he goes directly onto the computer. And in my head, I'm like, what does his morning routine look like? And I'm like, Heather, you're literally trying to control him because you had a really good morning routine. So he has to do what you did, right? But if it was the opposite and you were off your game, you wouldn't be trying to control him. And so I always tell people, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't get them to drink. But your impact of role modeling is so, so, so important. So if we stop trying to get everybody else to read the books that we're reading and we start implementing what is actually in those books, the things that we're learning, investing in yourself, becoming the person that you want to be, they will change as well. And if your spouse or partner is open to this, then listen to a podcast together, read a book together, and engage in those conversations. My personal relationship, knowing that I've been doing this work, I've been in this for almost a decade, okay? Like literally doing this work for almost a decade. I will hear my husband now start to get in his red zone and then reframe it in his mind. And then literally the next words out of his mouth are like, let me try this again. Like I can hear him in the other room doing that. He's never once taken a parenting course. He's never once done any of the courses that I teach. It's simply by the way that I role model, and he watches the relationship that I have with our boys. And we've had many uncomfortable conversations as well around, is this the legacy that you want to leave? Is this how you want to be remembered? And then sometimes where I just won't tolerate it anymore. So in the thick of it, when I was learning and things were changing for me and he was still going through his like hardship of trying to figure it out and he couldn't, I'm like, you're in your red zone. I'm getting the kids in the car and we're going for a drive. When you want to calm down, like, and stop with your toddler tantrum, we'll return back. And allowing him to just sit with his own shit, allowing him to sit with his own discomfort. But what I see a lot of women doing, and there's different types of partnerships. What I see a lot of women doing is overcompensating for their children to keep their partners comfortable and go, dad came home or whoever came home from work and he's tired. So I have to I have to manipulate myself and kind of shield and be the gatekeeper because he's in a bad mood. Allow him to project onto his own children and to screw up that relationship so they can see the full capacity of what is happening. Because what happens again and again is we come in as referees and we're manipulating how we want to feel. And then we become angry and resentful. And so I am always like, stay in your lane, get super clear on how you want to feel, do the work and become that person. And if they want to come on, they will come on. And if they don't, allow them to fully experience their human experience because that is their lesson to learn, not yours to cover up for.
I mean, that is powerful stuff, Heather. I think that will be deeply uncomfortable for some people and deeply resonant for others, and maybe a lot of overlap, right, in those two groups. But it's so powerful to say your children are having the experiences of both of those people. They're getting two different parenting experiences. I don't think there's a law that says we have to be the same, that we have to parent. I don't parent in the exact same way that my spouse does. And I think it's healthy for our children to see that there's a range and that we're both learning and evolving and growing. So I really want people to sit with what Heather just said about that, because that desire for control, the same desire for control that drives the yelling, is the desire for control that's going to say, how do I have my spouse do this the exact same way that I do? And they're not our children. Our children can't be fully controlled, but our spouses and partners definitely cannot be fully controlled.
Can I give you an example of this?
Yeah.
So I had a woman on my Instagram, and I know she's an avid follower of mine. She was posting these stories around how she wanted to paint a bedroom in their house, right? And she wanted to do it from like a fun place. And she kept showing like, here's the primer, painting. She was showing the step-by-step. And then towards the end, the kids started coming in. She has 4 children. Like children started to come in and she's like, when mom wants her alone time, it won't happen. But dad gets whatever. And I called her out on it because I have this relationship with her. And I was like, and where's dad? Oh, he's sleeping. He worked for a few hours this morning and then I gave him time to sleep. And I was being the good wife. And she said this with air quotes. I was being the good wife. So I took the kids on. And I was like, but listen, do you see how every single time you are sabotaging your joy sabotaging your joy to even just, you're literally creating that little space for yourself because you just wanted to paint a room, and you're allowing the children to blend over those boundaries. Not only are you saying, children, my boundaries don't matter, you're teaching them to never have boundaries with other women in their lives and that they could just walk on all over everybody. And you're also showing them, like, dad has the power, I have no power. And therefore, you can continuously disrespect my boundaries over and over and over again. And by her simply using her voice to say, honey, the kids are coming in the room. I said, did you ask him? She goes, no, I just spoke very loudly to try to get his attention. I said, so you didn't directly ask him for what you needed. If you would have said, honey, little so-and-so is in the room, can you please come get him? He probably would have clued in and said, oh, heck yeah, I didn't even notice, and come and get him, because you already had that space and contract in place. So when you do that again and again, and you discount what you need and what you want, one, you're going to become angry and resentful at your partner and your children, and they're going to feel that. And two, you are disrespecting yourself, which isn't even like, yes, it's impacting you, but man, you are creating this generational pattern in your children that women do not matter.
Yeah. That is an incredible story, because she already trusts you and your guidance, and you can walk her through this in real time. I love the idea of coaching through an Instagram story.
Well, that definitely wasn't. I was just, that's not coaching. I was
not
just like,
my norm.
Oh my gosh, I'm so triggered right
It's
now.
an intervention. Well, and I think that notion of what are we trying to model? And, we talk a lot about impact and intent. And if your intent is like, well, I'm trying to do something nice for my husband and I'm trying to help, but the impact of that is your children see that they have the all access pass to you, and there's no time that you can carve out for yourself, that there's a real mismatch between the intent and the impact of those two situations. I'm curious, Heather, what are you working on now? Like, this has been such a helpful discussion about yelling and specifically how we interact as parents. What are you working on now? Heather, we mentioned as a podcast called Mom is in Control, and we'll tell you how to find that in the show notes. What are you working on?
So I have a book coming out in early 2021. So we're doing the editing and all of that fun stuff. That's like, oh man, that's a big project in itself, and very strategic and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, working on that. I'm always podcasting, I run a free mini course. It's called Get Out of Your Own Way. So I talk more in detail about what this process is and giving the strategy behind that. So there's always something happening in my world.
That's awesome. I have a few speed round questions that we ask every guest. So there are 5 of them. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. First one is, what makes you feel brilliant?
Oh man. I was going to say when my children listen to me, when I feel without yelling.
Awesome. What's your favorite time-saving or productivity hack?
Brain dumping and pre-planning, which is something that as a rebel, I did not enjoy doing, but now I realize it's a sanity saver.
What have you learned to say no to?
People wanting to pick my brain.
What's one dream that you're chasing today?
Being able to give away like 50% of my income to charities, and it like doesn't put a dent in my pocket.
What is the song that you turn on when you need to get in the zone?
Man, there's this Beyonce song, I Was Here. Is that what it's called? I Was Here. And it's actually like kind of depressing, but it really just brings me back to the moment of like the impact that you can make. Like, I was here, I made a footprint on this earth.
So good. So good. I swear we're going to do a playlist of all of these song recos from our guests because they're so good. Where is the best place for people to find you online, Heather?
They can find me on definitely the podcast. I hang out there the most. So Mom is in Control. You can find that anywhere. My website, heathershovine.com. And I hang out a lot on Instagram, which is my name as well.
Perfect. We will link it all up if you want to just scroll down to the show notes and click away so you can find Heather. Thank you so much for being such a great guest and for such an enlightening conversation. I know I'm going to take to heart the idea of dropping in, getting in closer to have a more engaged and intimate conversation with the kids instead of escalating things. And I know a lot of our listeners will do the same. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much. I love these conversations. They're insightful, impactful, and I always walk away with something too. And it's my own advice.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Wasn't that fun? I loved getting the chance to talk with Heather. I hope that you are taking a really juicy nugget out of this conversation that you can go home and apply right away to your relationship with your children or with any children who are in your life. And if you know someone who would benefit from this episode, because maybe they've been talking to you over coffee, or maybe it's a relative who's just been lamenting that, oh, I want to figure out how to stop yelling at these kids, please share today's episode and share Heather's wisdom with them, because I think it's such an important message and one that I would love to see make its way into the world.